Hey, I'm NichBoy and welcome to Pocket for Friday, the 15th of July. Today on the show, Gabe and Lannister. Music to your ears and answers to your pockets. Alright, here's what's been making headlines. And first up, Valve's declaration of war against gambling websites has had a large and swift impact. In this legal Game of Thrones, Valve, the Lannisters, effectively said, stop exploiting the kingdom or we'll make our barristers run their swords, read pens, through you.
Bring me his head.
And then the great houses began to stir. Twitch went all high garden on the kingdom by buddying up with Valve and issuing a warning that streamers would be breaching their terms of service if they proceeded to broadcast or promote CSGO skin gambling. A breach of Twitch's terms of service is a slight to House Tyrell, punishable by beheading and possibly an account suspension. And it looks like the smaller houses have bent to the Lannister will, as the vast majority of offending betting sites have already conceded and shut down. This includes reasonably large sites such as CSGO Lotto, CSGO Rumble, and CSGO Wealth, which now just redirects to a plain text website which reads, "Rest in peace CSGO Wealth, blame Valve," which is such a Frey thing to say. However, OP Skins is still as active as a Baratheon bastard in a rowboat. They've issued a statement saying that, quote, OP Skins is not and never has been a gambling website, and point out that they have received no communication from Valve that OP Skins access to the Steam API will be blocked or limited in any way. While it's true that OP Skins website is more of a trade intermediary than a gambling site, it's still another layer over Valve's moderated market and is likely to go the way of the other Baratheons. Next up, and breeding season is over, people. Put your pants back on, John. The sex game, which billed itself as Harvest Moon meets hentai, was one of the biggest projects on crowdfunding site Patreon. Over 10,000 backers were coughing up $42,000 a month to fund the creation of the provocative game. Development seemed to be moving along nicely until this week when the game just disappeared from Patreon. According to the developers, they were hoodwinked by one of their own. The game's former art director, Vladimir Sandler, signed a very lucrative contract when he joined the team. When he left the studio, he was somehow able to retain full ownership over the art he produced and had a legal claim to half of the studio's savings as well. He has now directed the breeding season development team to remove all of his art assets from the game under threat of legal action, and gutted from the inside, development has come to an end. Sandler defended his actions on his personal blog, stating that, "I just wanted to let you guys know that I didn't do this out of spite, nor greed, but through legitimate disagreements with the game's method of management." Remembering that this is presumably the same management team that contractually forfeited half of their savings to one guy. Sandler continued, "The way the actual breeding season game development was going, it would never have actually been finished. I also wanted to say that my new project, Cloud Meadow, was made to actually save what I could of the breeding season project and deliver on the spirit of the promises made by the project." Promises of erections. Sucks for those patrons. But there was one patron who got all of his money back from Star Citizen. With the help of the LA Attorney General, a gentleman under the pseudonym of Street Roller has managed to have his $2,500 investment refunded. Street Roller directly approached Star Citizen developer Cloud Imperium Games about a refund because, as he puts it, the product remains unfulfilled and no longer constitutes the product I originally purchased. Cloud Imperium rejected his requests on 2 separate occasions before Mr. Roller took his case to the Attorney General of LA, the FTC, and the LA Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. Within a week, he received a partial refund, and soon after, he had been fully reimbursed. Squeaky wheel, etc., etc. And finally, Nintendo is releasing their newest console in November. Get ready for some innovative new No, wait, someone put an NES through a dryer. It's a baby NES. In true Nintendo rehashing, The company have taken something people loved from bygone decades and put a new coat of paint on it. The mini console is a pretty closed system which will launch with 30 NES classic games, have an HDMI out and a slick controller, but it's also compatible with the Wii's classic controller and the Pro version. It's a neat little package, but it's also quite limited. There's no internet access, you can't download and install new games, and you can't plug in cartridges if you've got a few lying around. But I love it! Finally, Nintendo have done something good. But you can't put new games on it, so that sucks. Classic Nintendo. All right, now it's time for Thing of the Day. YouTuber Ian Plays the Hits apparently owns at least one of every single instrument ever made, and thankfully he uses that power for good by covering game music.
Deep in the heart of Sydney Central City, NichBoy, Pierre, John, ladies and gentlemen, and Baby Sam discover Thing of the Day.
All right, now it's time for Ask Pocket, where you ask and then pocket. First up, our question comes in from the McGill. If I were to walk into the ABC and onto the set of Good Game, how soon would I be in charge of the entire production? Oh, McGill, you're forcing me to make so many assumptions here. I mean, do you know anything about television production? How well do you delegate? Do you look identical to Good Game's executive producer Janet Carr? If you answered yes to all of these questions, then I would have called security and immediately have you thrown out of the building, because to the question, how well do you delegate, you would have answered yes. And Janet's not that stupid, so I immediately would have smelled a fake. That being said, there are a huge amount of people who work here at the ABC, so there is a chance you could go by for some time without being noticed, as evidenced by the fact that a couple of weeks ago, a strange man walked into the Good Game office, sat down at Hinger's desk, and he looked nothing like Michael, and no one said anything for about 10 minutes because we all just assumed he must be here for some reason. Of course he wasn't, and when we found out, we called security and he was immediately executed, as is ABC policy. Moving on now, and our next question comes in from Snail XD. Do you think consoles and handheld devices will have a place in the gaming future, or will it all be PCs and phones? I think consoles will be here for some time. People like closed platforms and people like things that are easy to use. And while obviously PCs are superior in nearly every single way, they're also a lot of work. PCs are like raising kids. It's great fun and ultimately worth it, but sometimes they just shit themselves. The life of a PC gamer can be broken down as follows: 80% downloading, updating, patching, reformatting, defragging, unplugging and restarting, 15% just sitting and looking at your Steam library, not playing anything, and that leaves just 5% to play video games, and you're probably going to lose that Dota game anyway. And while all that hard work does mean that you get to play the best version of pretty much every game that doesn't have Batman in it, it does mean you need to invest a lot of time to make it happen, and consoles just don't have that. As much as I like to rag on Sony and Xbox for stupid decisions like not being able to organize my games on the PlayStation 4 or the entire Xbox dashboard, 99% of the time when I start my console, I know it's gonna work. And you can't put a price on that. Well, you can, it's the price of a console. And it's significantly cheaper than a PC. I don't know about handhelds though. I do think that if handhelds are going to survive, they need to pretty much be an extension of your home console, which doesn't sound ideal. Like, why would you want to play Horizon Zero Dawn on a smaller screen with presumably less graphical fidelity? But I do think it gives handhelds then a reason to exist. Because right now on my handhelds, I either play games that could easily run on my phone or games that I wish I could play on my TV or computer. So if I could play PS4 games on my Vita when I'm on the train or pretending to write Ask Pocket on Friday mornings, and then I go home and I can pick up where I left off, I would buy that in a heartbeat. The Vita does have some of that functionality with remote play right now, but it has a lot of conditions on it to make it work. But if in the future all games are streaming like Netflix, then technically everything that has a screen becomes a console, which means that there's actually no more consoles, because everything's a console, and you can't escape video games. You go to the train station and they have the timetables with the next train coming, and it's just streaming Bejeweled. I don't want to live there, so I don't know what my point is. We're moving on now, and next question from BMAC. Should you give games you have fallen out with a second chance? I did it with Payday 2 and I'm enjoying it. It depends on the falling out. I mean, my job is to play the first hour of pretty much everything, and then if a game doesn't grab me by the end of that, I tend to not go back to it. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes, but not often, even I can be wrong, but not often. Though I do stand by my review of Project Zero Maiden of Blackwater. Game no good. Insightful critique. But I will go back to a game if, one, everyone is raving about it and I feel like I just haven't gotten to the good part of the game yet, because sometimes games don't put their best foot forward. Last year, 2 games that I did write off at the beginning because for me their opening hours were awful were Metal Gear Solid and Until Dawn. And both of those games ended up earning special mentions in my best games of 2015. So the internet compelled me to keep playing, and I'm glad I did, because sometimes, but not often, even I can be wrong. The second scenario is if a game has a really steep learning curve and I just haven't understood how to have fun in it yet. A perfect example, Dota 2. I tried it 2 years ago, was utterly befuddled, and I uninstalled. Went back a year later, pushed through that befuddlement, and 200 hours later I went, yeah, okay, maybe I could see myself having fun in this game one day. But generally, I don't like to admit I was wrong. Because I'm not. I mean, sometimes, but not often. All right, that's it for today's episode of Pocket. My Pocketeers, let me know in the comments what game you have been wrong about and what game I've been wrong about. Hasn't happened. Not often, at least. And while you're on the internet, check out Good Game on Facebook, YouTube, and iView. Want to meet fellow Pocketeers? Then join the Pocketeers Facebook group and Steam group. You can follow Good Game on Twitter at Good Game TV, follow Pocket at NichBoy, at Pierre, at GG, at Monkey, at SMG. There are links to everything I just said in the description below. Today's Thing of the Day graphic was a 2-parter sent in by the Doctor of Who. If you've made a thing, please send it in. Until Monday, NichBoy out.